America loves freedom. We talk about it, we argue about it, and we all fear losing it. Some of us fear losing freedom to crime and violence. Others fear losing it to overreach by institutions built to protect us, authoritarianism. For decades, the debate about guns has forced us into a false choice. Safety or liberty. We're told we can only have one. But what if I told you that choice is an illusion? In 2012, 20 children and 6 educators were killed in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. This tragedy shook the nation, and it shook my father. He had immigrated to the United States 12 years earlier, believing deeply in democracy and that citizens could make change. So he did what citizens are supposed to do. He wrote his representatives, and the response was devastatingly simple: thoughts and prayers. When my dad told me this at age 11, I felt a frustration I had never known before. I felt like students like me weren't even a part of the conversations shaping our society. So last year, I decided I had had enough. I started Rockbridge Safer Country, an organization dedicated to preventing gun violence at my school. Through this work, I immersed myself in gun policy and the national conversation surrounding guns. And what I learned is that our biggest obstacle to change isn't disagreement. It's our failure to recognize that reasonable guardrails on gun ownership don't weaken freedom, they make it possible. This talk is not partisan. It's not about the left or the right. When we treat gun violence as a political topic, we force it to become a topic that can get shut down, because too often political topics are shut down. But that is a dangerous thing, because gun violence is not a topic of political discourse. It is an item of public safety, and it is all of our responsibility to protect public safety. This may sound unusual in today's polarized climate, but Americans actually agree on a lot more than we think. Research from Johns Hopkins School of Public Health finds that vast majorities support policies like universal background checks, universal firearm safety training, and red flag laws. At the heart of this debate is a tension that many Americans feel deeply. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for its children in the United States of America, according to the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm sure many of us have felt this fear. How many students have felt afraid, have sat in the corners of their schools during lockdown drills, wondering what they would do if it was the real thing? I know I have. How many parents have felt afraid to send their children to school after hearing about yet another school shooting? On the other hand, our founders believed that a well-armed populace could safeguard against tyranny. And too often we're told we can't have both safety and liberty. But history, data, and common sense prove otherwise. As I've said before, vast majorities agree on gun safety policies. Policies like red flag laws, universal background checks, and firearm safety training don't abolish the Second Amendment. They reinforce responsibility, the missing word in our conversations about freedom. Freedom without responsibility isn't liberty, it's chaos. And responsibility without freedom isn't safety, it's control. The Second Amendment was never about chaos. Its roots trace back to the idea of civic republicanism, that citizens should be capable of defending both themselves and their society. The founders envisioned informed, trained, and accountable citizens. As Aristotle said, citizenship is sharing in ruling and being ruled. True civic empowerment comes from understanding that rights carry responsibility, and this is exactly where smart gun policy strengthens freedom rather than weakening it. I want to talk about a framework I like to call freedom and responsibility. First is accountability. Universal background checks don't punish responsible gun owners, they protect them by making sure that those with a history of violence can't legally procure firearms. This isn't guilt by association. This is about clear standards, legal safeguards, and trust in fair systems. Second is education. We don't let people drive without the proper training because getting behind the wheel carries a responsibility. I drove my family here today, but not without taking the permit test, doing driver's ed, and driving around with my dad in the school parking lot for hours before even getting on the main road. No one wants untrained people like me operating metal death machines without the proper training. And universal, accessible firearm safety training would do the exact same thing. It would create responsible and trained citizens, not controlled citizens. Finally, prevention without punishment. Red flag laws allow firearms to temporarily be removed from people in moments of crisis. And these laws work. Columbia School of Public Health and Everytown Research and Policy have found that states that have implemented red flag laws have seen significant reductions in both homicides and suicides. This is not condemnation, it's prevention and protection. Some believe that any regulation leads to authoritarianism, but history actually proves that the opposite is true. Authoritarianism thrives when citizens are disengaged and divided. An informed, well-trained, accountable citizenry prevents authoritarianism through civic engagement, not vigilantism. We can't all be Batman, but we can all be engaged citizens, and this is the heart of the argument. The right to bear arms and the right to live free from violence are not enemies, they are siblings. They grow stronger together and weaker apart. When we treat freedom and safety as opposites, we lose both. But when policy is rooted in evidence, fairness, and shared belief, we protect what matters most: human life and human freedom. America doesn't need more conversations about guns, it needs better ones. Open, honest dialogue, rooted in responsibility. Freedom isn't just something we defend, it's something we practice every day. So my call to action is simple. Advocate for what you believe in. Even as students, we are powerful. We don't have to be able to vote to make change. Stay informed, be on social media. Call and email your representatives, they do log your comments. Sign up for public comment at town halls and school board meetings. Start advocacy clubs at your school like I did with Safer Country. Change doesn't come from silence, and it doesn't come from thoughts and prayers. Change comes from informed citizens who choose to act, and it takes all of us to work. And maybe, just maybe, if we all do the work, we can build a country where students like me don't have to be afraid to go to school,